Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to the Joe Chaffee Weather Show on the last day of the month of September the 30th, 2019. Going into the fourth quarter now. And we are on our way to what should be a very interesting next couple of months. And actually, the next week or so is quite fascinating with everything that's going on. Hurricane out in the eastern Atlantic. In case you were taking a break over the weekend, you may not have heard that Lorenzo briefly achieved Category 5 status, making it the second Category 5 hurricane of this hurricane season. And it was only for a brief time, about 6 to 8 hours, but enough to get it into the record books. And now headed for the Azores, and eventually in some form, I'm thinking probably in a post-tropical form, it's going to wind up impacting the weather in Ireland, England, and Scotland. Still not quite sure how that's going to play out, but we'll run through the details about that and what we think is going to happen. But the more important factor for weather in the United States, as far as Lorenzo is concerned, is the fact that it is going to be setting in motion a change in the weather pattern. You're going to see some of that start getting underway here late this week in the eastern part of the United States, but it may take a full week or more for the whole thing to kind of evolve and to see where we're going to wind up. So it's going to be an interesting pathway. You're going to start to see the changes roll across Europe and Asia, and then eventually work its way across North America. And as I said, it may take a while for that to happen. Meanwhile, the big snowstorm in the northern Rockies was indeed a big snowstorm. There are areas in parts of northern Montana that saw snowfall on the order of almost a winter's worth. Not quite a winter's worth, but almost a winter's worth of snow that fell in that part of the Northwest. So also very, very interesting how that is all playing out. All right, just let me know, guys, if you're. I see I'm getting some indication here that I'm having a signal issue, but that may be just on my end. If somebody can just kind of post up in the chat that you're seeing me and you're hearing me okay, that would be that would certainly help me out with all of this. All right, so in the meantime, let me just remind everybody, in case you haven't done it already, to please make sure you have the updated version of the weather app. The app's been updated, so you're going to be able to get your not only just notifications, which were already there available, but we will default to your location now for the local forecast and current conditions. So just bear that in mind, and you may have to manually do the update. Some phones it'll do automatic, on other phones it won't. But if case you don't have the latest version, just manually update it, and it's available for the iPhone. That was the one thing that we were waiting for. Otherwise, if you haven't downloaded the app, just go to the App Store or to Google Play and download Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. All right, there seems to be an issue here, so hang on one second. Let's see if I can resolve it on my end and see what's going on. You know, some of you saying you're hearing me okay, some of you saying you're seeing me, some of you saying there's a problem here. So I'm doing a refresh. Oh, looks like I'm okay on my end. So keep your fingers crossed that everything works out okay. I'm fine now. All right, excellent. So, all right, let's get rolling here while I got a signal and everything seems to be working. So I want to take you to Glacier Electric Cooperative's webcam up in Cutbank, Montana. And I think the takeaway from this is that they know how to clear snow up there, okay? It's been snowing there for 3 days, and if you notice, the streets are all wet. Now, part of this is also seasonal. I mean, we are still at the end of September. I know it's the Northern Rockies. I know we're talking about places with elevation, but the sun is is still not quite at the angle that it would be in December and January. So it didn't take long. I did notice that during the nighttime hours, obviously you'd see accumulating snow here, and it looks as if there's less snow here today than was yesterday. So obviously some melting's been going on. But at a peak here on one of the shots, it looked like it was at least a foot and a half on the ground, particularly after coming through an overnight period where there's been some snowfall. So anyway, that's how they get rid of snow up there. They just get rid of it. It's not like in the New York area where it becomes a religious experience sometimes for some areas in the New York City area anyway. To move snow out of here. And here's the Weather Service. This is 72 hours of snowfall. In terms of the totals, the darker blue areas are all on the range of 36 inches or more, and we only can go up to the Canadian border, which is at the top of the screen. But Great Falls is in the 12-inch range. They actually set a record there with almost 15 inches of snow. But there's a lot of variability. Missoula, Montana, only getting an inch. Helena, about 4 inches. I'm assuming that the 72-hour period, which takes us back to Friday morning, okay, that should cover most of the snowfall that occurred here. Spokane, yesterday, I had my point on the wrong spot because I was having trouble seeing exactly where it is, but 2 inches of snow fell there. This is no doubt a record snowstorm for this time of year. And in fact, you could probably have had this occur at any time of the wintertime, and it would have broken some records somewhere. This was truly an incredible event to have happen. Deep trough in the west, and of course, we're getting the other side of that with the very warm temperatures that we're getting ready to have here in the eastern part of the U.S. So I'm just kind of looking here at forecast highs. For my neck of the woods, if you look anywhere from northeastern Virginia to southern New England for tomorrow, we should be back into the 70s and low to mid 80s as you head southward toward the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area, mostly 70s from New York City north and east. Wednesday is the day that it's going to be hot. We're going to, and this is going to really depend on cloud cover and the timing of a cold front that's going to be moving southward through the Hudson Valley and northeastern Pennsylvania. You see the tight range in temperatures. You start to go north of New York City, and you've got areas back up through interior Connecticut. They don't get out of the 70s, but that west wind and enough sunshine will boost temperatures up close to 90 in New York City and to about 91 or 2 in Philadelphia, and low 90s in southeastern and south central PA, and low, and even a few numbers pushing 94 or 5 around the Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. And the heat, by the way, has been pretty much unrelenting from the Carolinas on south through the Gulf states. And that's going to continue into Wednesday because we've got to get 2 cold fronts through here in the eastern part of the United States. And once that's done, we are going to see some genuine relief through all of this. So this eventually does go away. And just to show you some of the changes here that we're expecting, so the first front will try to cool things off. 50s on Thursday across much of New England and upstate New York. The 80s still in southern New Jersey, down into Maryland and Virginia, even some spots still near 90. So the first front will get hung up in there somewhere on Thursday. This also will opens up the opportunity for some much-needed rain. And then on Friday, and I think this is probably a bit underdone in terms of the extent of the cooler temperatures, I think we could see these temperatures actually lower. The highs of the day might be left over from midnight, and that in reality, these highs may wind up only being in the upper 50s to mid 60s, maybe mid to upper 60s as you get down further to the south. But no doubt that we're talking about some pretty cool air here. And but when we get toward the end of the week, and the nights are going to be nice too, because we're going to see temperatures down in the 50s and probably into the 40s. That's for Friday morning. And then for Saturday morning, you're talking about 40s and 30s, and even some low 30s down through middle and upper Hudson Valley. So we'll probably see the first frosts here across interior New York, northeastern New York, and on up through New England. We've already seen some in northern New England. We'll probably see those frosts extend a bit further to the south. So all of this is part of the process that is underway, and Lorenzo is definitely part of this process. I'm just going to jump on real quick here. Just want to make sure you guys are okay. Seems like everything is working well. I'm being told I have a very strong signal, so we're all good. So let's go back to the maps and move along. So right now, in terms of ongoing precip, there isn't really much going on across the United States. See some light rain showers. We're beginning to transition over into that warmer air, or at least trying to. So we're seeing a few light rain showers, mostly aloft in parts of the Hudson Valley and through northeastern Pennsylvania. And meanwhile, around the periphery of the high, and you can tell that because these showers and storms back in the Virginia Panhandle, western North Carolina, down through South Carolina and Georgia are all moving north to south. So they're moving around the eastern periphery of the big upper high that has been sitting down here for quite a while now, and will sit down here for a little while longer. And we're actually seeing some scattered showers coming in from off the Atlantic into Florida and going northeast to southwest. So there's the eastern part of your ridge. And if you want to see where the western part of the ridge is, you can look at the showers coming off the Gulf of Mexico and moving northwestward through Texas. So that's the western periphery of the upper high. And it's easy enough to pick out here on the screen. Whoops, I'm going to knock my microphone off, but kind of goes like this. So your flow is going, of course, you're talking about a clockwise flow. There's your upper high. I drew it over Mississippi, but you get the general idea here. So you're getting these showers and storms moving around the periphery on one side, and then also, moving around the periphery on the other side. That ridge really is in full control of things in the east. And of course, you've got a deep trough that is working its way through the western part of the U.S. Now, let's change the subject just a little bit, and we're going to go to Lorenzo as we take a look at the satellite loop tonight. I'll give it a quick refresh here so we can get a few new frames. Still have a fairly well-defined eye. In fact, it looks like the eye has made a bit of a comeback in the last 4 or 5 hours. So at the very least, the system seems to be, Lorenzo seems to be holding its own with top winds of 105 miles an hour and moving north-northeast at 15. So be curious to see what the Hurricane Center does with this in terms of strength. Of course, they have all their tools and the scatometer and that they can run a pass through it so they can get an idea of what kind of winds are being produced. But it still looks like, at least on the IR, the infrared picture here, the infrared loop, that you still have some pretty good banding there, and the core looks fairly solid. The water temperatures here at this area, 30.9 and 42.1 west, are still pretty warm. So certainly supportive, could certainly still support a strong Category 2 or even a Category 3 hurricane, and it is moving toward the north-northeast. Now here's how it looks on the larger view, so you can catch what's going on off the African coast, which really isn't very much. You've got weak waves down there. This is still a very, very large storm. And if you look elsewhere in the subtropics and back over through the Caribbean, you've got all sorts of shear going on. So I really don't think we're going to see much in the way of development in the short term, at least. But Lorenzo definitely dominating the picture here in terms of the size. It's still the cirrus canopy goes up about 5 degrees to the north of the storm center of the eye, and about almost but not quite 5 degrees to the south. So it's just about 10 degrees across from south to north That's a 600-mile spread. That's very impressive. And the east-west canopy goes also about the same, maybe even a little bit more. So there are going to be impacts from this to the Azores, even though the center may wind up passing close to or just west of the westernmost island of the Azores. But I'm thinking that between that and the momentum, that there certainly will be tropical storm force winds and possibly even some hurricane force winds that the islands, the western islands in particular, could experience. And now you can see the Hurricane Center's forecast track here is to the northeast. So it impacts the Azores Tuesday night into Wednesday. And then after that, it remains to be seen what we're going to be dealing with. Is this going to become, and I think it probably will to a certain extent, morph into some sort of post-tropical system as it approaches Ireland and Scotland. It looks like, at least from the Hurricane Center's forecast, that it goes west of those islands. There's still the possibility that this could wind up getting caught by a rather large storm that's going to be out south of Greenland, and that you could see this rotating up and around it. That was something that a number of the models were showing on and off for the last week or so, and then now they've suddenly kind of grabbed onto this idea that that upper low is not going to be able to pull this storm in, but that instead it just kind of gets deflected in some fashion off to the east. And this is something that the GFS, the Europeans, been doing, the ICON model's been doing. They've been sort of going back and forth on it, but lately they have kind of been sticking with this notion. Now here's the GFS from earlier today, and I've got the perspective here of Europe. So at this point, it's already past the Azores, and you can see it come onto the scene here Wednesday afternoon. And you'll notice it's moving on a north-northeast course and then suddenly gets ejected eastward across Northern Ireland and through England. Of course, it weakens here. You've got this big upper air and surface storm out well to the west that's driving all of this. So rather than capture it, it ejects it out to the east. And in fact, we'll take a look at what the new model run does with it. And I already have it set for 90 hours, so at this point it looks like it's fairly consistent here. But you've got Lorenzo, you've got what will be the Atlantic storm south of Greenland. You would think at this point it would just kind of want to go up and around, but again it gets ejected. And I think part of the reason it gets ejected is we have our own low that's moving across southern Canada, that moves out over Nova Scotia on Wednesday and south of Newfoundland by Wednesday afternoon. That's going to drag our cold front through here later on Wednesday. It looks like that low kind of prevents this, but to some extent, from being pulled back westward, and instead it just kind of kicks it out to the east, because that low actually winds up lifting north and northwestward. And then you have the second wave, and this is the one for Thursday. Now, this is the one for late Thursday, that's Thursday night, that's going to bring in some rain into the northeast and northern mid-Atlantic states and also up into New England. And that's going to be the driver of the cool air that will be coming down for Friday and Saturday and probably lingering into the first part of Sunday. So that one follows and goes out into the Atlantic. And if you look at Lorenzo here, it stays, there's some kind of core low that stays intact as it approaches Northern Ireland and goes, at least on this run, it's just to the north of the northern shores of Northern Ireland as a 976 pressure there, and then it moves over Scotland and weakens fairly rapidly. So a lot's going to depend in terms of the impact to Ireland and to England and Scotland. A lot of this is going to depend on how much of a core is going to be able to survive as it moves northward. Does it make a true transition into a post-tropical storm, or is it going to be some kind of hybrid? That remains to be seen. But definitely something to watch here for that part of of for northwestern Europe and for the British Isles and for Ireland. Something definitely to pay attention to. And of course, with the Azores, I think they're going to, as I said, experience hurricane conditions. Meanwhile, the other thing about Lorenzo that's very important here is the fact that, and we've been talking about this, that Lorenzo kind of sets the ball in motion for some pattern change. And I think the best way to look at this, now, if you do this off of tropical tidbits, it's kind of hard. This map is very large, so it's kind of hard for me to leave the date visible without cutting off the bottom of the map. So I'd rather you take a look at this here just to see the map. And what I would suggest you do is, if you're interested, to go to tropical tidbits and then pull up this hemispheric view. So, and then run it through a few times, because there's so much going on that you may have to look at it a couple of times to start to see different all the changes that are going to be going on. And always remember, when we talk about pattern change across not just the United States or North America, but even and all around the world, it's a very, very long grinding process much of the time. There's a lot of chess pieces here that have to be moved. Some of them get stronger, some of them get weaker, new ones form, old ones die out. And that just takes a lot of time. And it looks like, if we follow Lorenzo along, the energy from that really kind of sets the ball rolling in the longer term. We're going to lose this ridge in the east, okay? This big ridge that's in the east right now gets flattened out. It doesn't really quite go away, but Lorenzo goes in to Europe and then energizes that upper feature that is on the upper right, okay, over Eastern Europe and into Siberia. And that, in turn, starts to cause other things to happen downstream. Let me just run it backwards. So Lorenzo goes in. You've got this big mess in the Atlantic that's driving that. Several troughs reinforce it. But you start to see, as we look toward the latter part of next week and beyond, a fairly healthy trough drops into the eastern part of the United States. So this is past whatever happens this late this week and into the weekend. This would be for sometime early next week. But the bottom line is the ridge is gone here in the east. That trough lifts out, and you have and at the end of the day, if we wind up seeing this down the road, and I don't know if that is going to be the case, but we don't really see any kind of ridge in the east anymore, and we have pretty much a westerly flow coming in from off the Pacific and running across the United States. It's not a cold flow, but at the same time, it's not the warmest flow that you might see, but you've got air coming into the Pacific, troughing down in the west, sort of a flat ridge here in the eastern part of the United States in the longer haul. I just would suggest that we're probably not quite done with where all of this is going to wind up. This is only going to cover us for the next couple of weeks. So I think we still probably are going to see some more changes as we move through the rest of the month of October. One of the outcomes through all of this, in my view, is we are going to finally see some more opportunities for rain. We've been bone dry. I don't think anybody would really argue with me about that, but we have been bone dry through all of this, and I think we're probably going to see that change a bit. I think we're going to wind up with weather fronts that are going to be able to produce some, let's call them widespread rainfalls going forward. So here's our action for this week. Obviously, at least into Wednesday. Wednesday's our very warm day. Here comes our first weather front on Wednesday afternoon. And it also ties back to another low that's developing in southeastern Colorado. Okay, that is going to run out to the northeast. And this is the second front that comes through here for Thursday night and Friday. Looks like the GFS might be a little bit slower here, but I think this second front's going to make it down at least into northern Georgia, northern Alabama, somewhere in here. And we are going to have some nice, for those of you who like it nice and cool, we're going to get some really nice cool air, as we showed you earlier with the temperature map. The high is going to build in. It moves out over the weekend. southwest flow. Another front is already approaching, so you can see that there's showers with this, and that reaches the East Coast. Now, the GFS kind of has it getting hung up a little bit on Monday as that next trough swings around. So if that's the case, this could be a pretty decent amount of rain and showers up and down the East Coast. Let's look for for the models to start showing this a bit more over the next couple of days. And for those of you waiting for a big rain, particularly in the very dry southeast, this might be your opportunity. Then that goes out. Nice, decent shot of cool air here with this high that's come down, this 1025 high for Tuesday. We're now at October the 8th, so we're talking about a week from tomorrow. And then that high makes it to the coast. Air looks pretty cool. And then waiting for the next front, there's a bit of a flat ridge here in the east, so looks like some kind of low develops here in the longer term. Who knows how that plays out, because that's too far out in the long range anyway. But the bottom line is this ridge cracking in the eastern part of the United States this week. Once that's gone, at least for the next week to 10 days, we're going to have reasonable weather. At times, temperature. At times, it's going to be on the chilly side. And we are going to have some opportunities for some showers. So let me really quick. Let's just run through. I just want to look at. Let's go to rainfall. We'll take a look at the rainfall totals on the GFS anyway, running through next week. So for the next 7 days, showing. At least we're not showing bone dry conditions like we have been showing through much of the East Coast. Still a little bit on the dry side in pockets from Virginia down to Georgia, but there are going to be some areas that pick up to a few inches of rain, and particularly from northernmost Tennessee northeastward through upstate New York and into western New England, the rain looks substantial. And also back from New Mexico northeastward through the southern and central plains and back through the Great Lakes. And if we're going to eventually go to a trough in the east, we will eventually go to a ridge in the west. And you see at least the beginnings of that with little or no precip in the southwestern part of the United States, and still very dry throughout much of the central Rockies anyway. A little bit more action up in the north. But you've had your snowstorm, folks, up in that part of the world. So I don't know how much more you're going to be able to grind out of this so early in the season, but was very interesting to see a storm of this magnitude during the month of September. It just doesn't happen. Why can't I minimize my window? Okay, now I can minimize my window. Hang on one second, folks. I'm going to join the chat board here in a moment. By the way, I should have said this at the top. Happy and blessed Rosh Hashanah to those of you who are celebrating the Jewish New Year. All the best to you. And now I'm on the chat board. So we had that little hiccup, and that was about it. So let me just, we're going to cut it a little bit shorter than usual. Will October snow happen anywhere in the Northeast? Daniel Fitzsimmons. Yeah, somebody in Maine, northern New England, upstate New York, near the lakes. Of course, it happens every year. In the rarest of years that you don't get at least someplace up in upstate New York in elevation or in northern New England that doesn't get snow. It happens almost every October. It might not happen at the beginning of the month, but if we're going to have that trough in the east for a little while, can't see why not. Maximilianimus. That's my nephew's name, by the way. I'm in southwest Ireland at the moment in County Clare. Oh my. We were giving a very big warning for Thursday. Should I fear? Well, let me, from what I'm seeing right now, okay, please bear that in mind. What I'm seeing right now, this is probably not going to be like Ophelia from a couple of years ago, because if you remember, Ophelia came in right along the south coast of Ireland and was quite destructive in some places with wind and rain, not so much as they're moving so quickly. I'm not sure yet with regards to what to expect with this because of the fact that it's going to your west. Is there going to be a core tropical part of this that survives that far north? That I'm not sure of. I certainly would continue to pay close attention to the weather developments over the next couple of days. That I think is probably to me the biggest question, and maybe we'll have a better handle on this for tomorrow. Cranky Timothy Veltman, cranky weather guy, already said, cue the snow weenies who think this major storm in the Northeast is a harbinger and a sign of things to come. In the Northwest, I'm sorry. Of course the snow weenies think the Northwest. It's so funny. I continue to come and see snow forecast after snow forecast about this upcoming winter, which is so typical of all the snow forecasts that come out every winter. No one ever puts out a forecast that says, in fact, I should put one out. I should really put one out that says exactly that. I guess maybe my biggest fear in doing that is the fact that if it winds up being right, I don't know it's necessarily a good thing for me if it winds up being right. But it's so annoying. It really is so annoying. It's the El Nino. It's the lack of El Nino. It's the La Nina. It's the lack of the La Nina. The QBD, the NAO, the PNA, the CBS, NBC, and Fox. Are there any other acronyms we might want to use in all of this? The silliness that is pervasive over the weather world at this time of year is nothing short of annoying. And sometimes it can be downright destructive when it comes to trying to just, having your credibility questioned because you get all these silly long-range forecasts. I'll tell you what, why don't we just let things happen and let them evolve, and let's watch the short and we'll call it the medium range, which is out 10 days to 2 weeks, and we'll watch that, we'll see what happens, and we'll go from there. Is there any practical need that on the September 30th you need to know what kind of winter we're going to have? No, there really isn't. So let it go, okay? That's kind of how I look at it. Charlie Baker, supposed to be 90 degrees on Wednesday in Southeast PA. Got that right. You may actually climb up tomorrow. You may get up fairly high tomorrow in some places in Southeast PA. You could at least make it up into the middle 80s if you break out and have enough sun. William Uber, okay, Siberian snow cover. I didn't set up the maps yet, but tomorrow's October 1st. So at least the people who look at that and follow it, October's the big month. So they watch the next 4 to 5 weeks of snow. It's the rate of snow cover growth in Siberia, supposedly tied to the kind of winters that you have in the eastern part of the United States. We'll start looking. I pulled those maps up back just for laughs about a week or so ago, but over the next few days, I don't have it set up right now, but over the next few days, I'll bring those maps up. We'll start to take a look at it, and we'll talk a bit more about it as we get through the month. It's an interesting phenomena to me. I like looking at it. I find that the whole concept is pretty interesting. It's also part of the process of long-range people looking for that magic bullet that's going to give them answers with regards to long-range forecasts, and I just don't think that exists. It's just too many variables in too many places. Will Saturday be in the upper 50s, Daniel Fitzsimmons? Might very well be. I think it may. On one of those days, I don't know about Saturday. Friday's a kind of maybe a better chance. One of those 2 days, it probably will have a tough time getting much above 60 for a daytime high. If I had to bet, I would probably say it would be Saturday. It depends on the high and how fast it moves out. But let's get there first, and we'll see what happens. Central Park, snowfall. Scott Briller taking the 2 record years, the least snowiest, 2.8, 72-73, 75 inches for 95-96. If you want to use areas nearby, that bottom number could be closer to 4 or 5 inches, and that top number could be close to 95 or 100. So there's your range, okay, somewhere in there. And average is somewhere between 25 and 35, depending on whether you're sitting on the immediate coast or you're just inland. You go further inland, those amounts go even higher. Paul Roman, any severe weather associated with the cold fronts coming? I don't know. I think if there's a shot for it, it might be on Thursday, but it may wind up being in areas south of, say, from southern New Jersey and Delaware, southern Pennsylvania southward, because the first cold front is going to stall out somewhere in there. So the warm sector is going to set up a little bit further to the south. So that's my guess. That's my early guess. I don't know about Wednesday so much. The front's going to come through. The temperatures will be pushing up toward 90. I think there could be some scattered showers or maybe a thunderstorm or two. I don't know if it's going to be, right there for severe weather or not. The upper support is kind of questionable. It's the second front probably has more to it. So we'll take a look at that a bit closer for tomorrow. Oh, Weather Enlow, you've already thrown in the towel for southeastern Virginia. You're done with hurricane threats? I don't know. Now that you've thrown in the towel, maybe that's the ultimate contrary indicator. I'm not sure. Lewis, just kidding, by the way. Let's see. Erica Baker says, if I wake up one morning and have a foot of snow on the ground, you would guess that it had snowed. Good observation there, Erica. Long-range forecast for New York City, says David Schwartz. Area, time of below normal temperatures interspersed with above normal temperatures. Snowy at times, rainy at others. Times of dry and clear as well. Yes, it will be winter and it will be cold sometimes. Hurricane recon, do any other nations help the USA pay for them? I don't think they're cheap. I will tell you, Bill, they are budgeted for it. I don't know how that works, but with these, if you get a years where you get a lot of storms that are offshore, they actually are pretty happy about using their budget, because the way it works in the federal government is, if you get a budget for something and you don't use it, and I worked for the federal government for a little while, so I understand this. If you get something is budgeted and you don't use that budget, you don't get that money the next year, okay? So you're not rewarded for saving money. That's kind of how it works. So if you exceed your budget, then they look at it as, then maybe you do need more money. So when you get into a situation where they haven't flown enough flights, they will purposely fly out flights just to use up their budget, so they make sure they get the same appropriation for next year. It's just kind of how it works out there. All right, folks, I think that does it tonight on this Monday evening. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it. Again, happy Rosh Hashanah to those celebrating tonight. We will have our regular YouTube live stream tomorrow at 7, weather in 5 tomorrow morning. So we'll update you on everything that's going on in the short range and with Lorenzo, and we'll see what it looks like as as it approaches the Azores, and then we go toward the possibility of it going to Ireland and maybe even to England and Scotland in one form or another. I'm just checking the Hurricane Center is talking about two areas of disturbed weather now, one north of the Dominican Republic and another one in the northwestern Caribbean, but only very low chances for development for either system. Lorenzo and the 5 o'clock advisory, 30.9, 42.1, 957 millibars, 90 knots gusting to 105. Let me just check real quick to see if there is a reconnaissance aircraft going out there, and the answer is no, there is not. So they're quiet and calm at the moment through all of this. So, as I said, tomorrow, weather in 5 tomorrow morning. We'll have our regular live stream tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. And then we'll have weather website posts somewhere in between. Thank you, Daniel Fitzsimmons, for reminding me. Yes, the Angry Ben, the Angry Weatherman, has an app on Android. So let me get you the link for that. Google Play. But my friend Ben Scott, who does my nycweathernow.com website, has, we're trying to get his app on Apple, so we're fighting that battle at the moment. But his app is on for Android devices. So here's the link for that. Be sure to download it. It's also absolutely free, and you can use it with my app, and you've got more weather that you know what to do with. So thank you, Daniel, for reminding me about that. Have a great night, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow.